Today, we're diving into one of the world's most incredible spiritual texts, the Bhagavad Gita. Now, at its heart, this isn't just some ancient story. It's this incredibly dramatic conversation that happens on a battlefield, right on the brink of a massive, devastating war. And it's a conversation that gets to the core of a crisis I think we all face in one way or another.
Okay, so let's just drop right into the scene. You have this heroic warrior, Arjuna, and he's looking out across the battlefield. But who does he see? Not just enemies. He sees his cousins, his uncles, his old teachers. And he's so completely overwhelmed by grief that he says his limbs are quivering and his mouth is going dry. I mean, his body is literally shutting down from the sheer despair of it all.
And this right here, this is the heart of the whole thing. Arjuna's problem is the core of the Gita. He has a duty, right? A duty to fight for what's just. But to do that, he has to kill the people he loves. It's an impossible choice, a moral knot that feels so modern. He's trapped between his responsibility and his compassion, and it feels like any move he makes is the wrong one.
So, in this explainer, we're going to walk through the Gita's powerful answer to this crisis. We'll start with Arjuna's dilemma, then dive into Krishna's teachings about our true nature. We'll look at this idea of selfless action, try to understand the ultimate goal of it all, and finally, see how this ancient text is still an amazing guide for life today. All right, so let's really set the scene. The Battle of Kurukshetra is the external conflict. We're talking a literal war for a kingdom. But what the Gita does right away is hint that this physical battlefield, well, it's also a metaphor for a much deeper, much more personal struggle.
And what's so fascinating is how the Gita works on these two levels at the same time. On one hand, yeah, it's a literal story about a warrior prince, Arjuna, who has to do his duty. But on the deeper level, the one that really speaks to us, the battlefield is life itself. The real war isn't against other people, it's against our own inner enemies, our attachments, our anger, our selfish desires.
So Arjuna is a complete wreck. How does Krishna, his guide and charioteer, respond to this total despair? Well, he doesn't start with battle strategy or politics. He starts by completely blowing up the very idea of what it means to be human.
Krishna introduces this concept of the atman, or the soul, and this right here is the absolute core of his first teaching. The idea is that who you really are, it's not your body, not your name, not your job, or your relationships. Your true self is this eternal, indestructible spark of existence that can never, ever be harmed.
Krishna makes this brilliant distinction. He tells Arjuna, look, the body is temporary. It's born, it lives, it dies. That's just how it works. But the soul is permanent. It was never born, and it will never die. So Krishna argues, grieving for the body is basically misunderstanding what's real and what's not. Now, this isn't a justification for violence, not at all. It's an invitation for Arjuna to see beyond the temporary physical shell to something much deeper.
Okay, so if we are this eternal soul, and not just our body, then what does that mean for how we live? How are we supposed to act in this temporary world? And that question right there brings us to the Gita's second huge teaching, the path of selfless action. This is karma yoga, and the crucial point is that Krishna tells Arjuna he has to act. Sitting on the sidelines is not an option. The key, though, is how he acts. He has to do his duty, in this case, fight, but without being attached to the outcome. He shouldn't be fighting because he wants to win or because he's afraid to lose. He just has to fight because it's his duty. Now, different schools of thought see selfless action through slightly different lenses. One view sees it as pure devotion. You do all your work as an offering to God, to Krishna, simply for his satisfaction. Another view sees it more like a form of meditation. The action itself becomes a tool to fight your inner demons, that desire, that anger, and to quiet your mind. But you see the common thread, right? Both paths are about getting your ego out of the way of the results.
So the core principle is this. The goal isn't just to do your job well. It's to do your duty simply because it is your duty. This frees you from that emotional roller coaster of success and failure. And according to the Gita, when you can act with that mindset, you're on the path to the ultimate goal.
So, what is that ultimate goal? What does it even mean to attain the supreme? Well, that leads us to the final and maybe biggest piece of Krishna's teaching, understanding the nature of the divine itself. The Gita talks about the divine in a few different ways, which is really cool. Think of it like this. There's Brahman, which is like this vast, impersonal, ultimate reality that's the source of everything. Then there's a personal God you can actually have a relationship with. For Arjuna, that's Krishna. And then there's this beautiful idea of the Paramatma, the supersoul, which is a spark of the divine living inside every single one of us.
And these different ideas lead to different spiritual paths. For some, the goal is devotion to a specific personal form of God, like Krishna. That's the path Arjuna takes. For others, the goal is more about realizing that your own self is one with that universal abstract spirit, to kind of merge back into the source of everything through deep meditation and knowledge.
So how do we pull all of this together? The Gita isn't just philosophy. It's really meant to be a practical, hands-on guide for navigating the battlefield of our own lives.
The Gita basically lays out a roadmap. It all starts right where Arjuna was. You have to face your crisis head on. The first step out is actually a step in to know your true eternal self. Once you have that understanding, you can act selflessly without getting hung up on the results. Then you focus those actions toward a higher purpose. And the final destination of that whole journey? It's peace, a real, lasting freedom from the suffering of the world.
And this is the ultimate promise. When you follow this path, all the anxieties and miseries of life, they just lose their grip on you. Your mind, which is no longer being tossed around by desire and fear, becomes steady. This isn't about escaping the world. It's about finding an unshakable peace and clarity right in the middle of all the chaos.
And so the Gita leaves us with this question. It reframes our own struggles not as random problems, but as our personal battlefield, our own Kurukshetra. It asks us to look inside, to identify the real enemies, our own attachments, our own fears, and to fight that inner battle with wisdom and with purpose.